The post-surgery agony was hell, but the short reply, "Just call a car, Mom," from my own daughter felt colder than the scalpel. My spine was fixed, but my heart shattered. I am Eleanor Hawthorne, a 58-year-old retired literature professor who had just spent 3 weeks recovering in New York after a complex 12-hour spinal fusion surgery to remove a rare tumor compressing my spinal cord. The doctors had given me only 2/3 of a chance to survive without permanent paralysis. I signed the papers without telling my daughter, Cynthia, or my son-in-law, Marcus, the sheer magnitude of the risk. I didn't want to bother them. It was always about not bothering them. I had spent my entire adult life meticulously avoiding being an inconvenience, a burden, a problem to be solved. This habit was deeply ingrained, a result of 30 years of prioritizing their peace and progress over my own peril and pain. Now, I was at Orlando International Airport, Florida. Every step, even with crutches, was a form of torture. The metal rods and screws that now supported my spine felt like a cage, a constant dull ache that medicine barely contained. I wore a heavy woolen coat to hide the long scar running from my neck down the middle of my back, a painful reminder of the life and death battle I had just won. The coat offered physical warmth, yet the chilling indifference I felt from my family cut through the fabric and the medication. I had texted the family group only once, asking for a simple favor, a request that was, in my post-surgical state, a vital necessity. I landed in Orlando. I'm at Gate A, walking very slowly. "Cynthia, can you come get me? I need a car that lets me sit without bending my back, and I can't risk a standard taxi ride in this condition." "Please, just this one time," I waited. More than 20 minutes passed. Those 20 minutes stretched into a decade of isolation, an agonizing reliving of every small sacrifice, every deferred dream, every moment I had put myself last. I watched families reunite, their tight hugs, their joyful tears, feeling like salt in my emotional wound. I saw a young man rush to embrace his elderly mother, carefully taking her small suitcase. His attentiveness was a mirror showing me the harsh reflection of my own reality. Finally, my phone vibrated. It was Cynthia, my only child. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Marcus and I are tied up with preparations for his new real estate launch event today. 3 p.m. is too tight and we simply cannot step away. The caterers are arriving, the media team is setting up, and the venue needs our full attention. Why don't you just call an Uber Lyft Black? I know you gave us $500,000 to pay off the mortgage, so calling a fancy car isn't a problem for you. Use some of that money. It's what it's there for, right?" My hand gripped the phone until it hurt, leaving white pressure marks on my skin. That reply, with its cold calculation, its blatant prioritization of a fleeting business event over my critical medical need, had frozen the very blood in my veins. The mention of the money was the cruelest cut, twisting my act of unconditional love into a transaction, a justification for their callous indifference. $500,000. I hadn't mentioned the money. It was my life savings, the sum I had given them as an act of love to help them buy their villa in the affluent area and invest in Marcus's real estate company. I asked for nothing in return, and now that sacred gift was used to dismiss my desperate plea for help. Less than 5 minutes later, a text from Marcus arrived, reeking of false reconciliation and self-interest, clearly a follow-up to check if I had complied with their instruction. "Mom Eleanor, don't be too hard on Cynthia. We're meeting key stakeholders for the new St. Jude's Neuro Wellness Clinic launch. The high-end neurological clinic Marcus is developing needs the presence of people like you, people who are respected and who have faced major health challenges. Your health is our #1 priority, but please understand our career needs. We are doing this for the future of the family. See you at home soon, Mom. Don't forget, first impressions are everything in this business." I looked up, trying to swallow the bitter tears. The irony was suffocating. They were launching a neurological clinic, yet completely ignored the life-threatening neurological surgery I had just endured. I wasn't their mother. I was a person like Mom, a social networking tool, a potential endorsement in their eyes. I had faced death alone in New York and won, a victory of pure physical and mental strength. But this rejection, this crushing realization of my worth to them, made me feel utterly defeated right here in my hometown. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional trauma of being reduced to a financial or networking asset. I leaned heavily against the cold marble wall, feeling the searing pain from my spine radiating through my entire body. I desperately needed safe transportation, a car with enough space for me not to bend, with a smooth, air ride suspension. I couldn't risk a regular taxi. I needed a solution, an anchor in this emotional storm, before I succumbed to the pain and the despair. I couldn't rely on them. I suddenly remembered Dr. Alistair Finch, the world-renowned neurosurgeon who had politely declined to operate on me because he only worked in London, but who had spent over 2 hours advising me via video call, helping me find the best surgical team in the US. He was a legend, known as the Golden Hand, famous for his integrity, his philanthropic work, and his distance from the media circus. In desperation, I composed a brief text, hoping for nothing more than professional advice, a medical recommendation for a specialized transport service. Dear Dr. Finch, I am Eleanor Hawthorne. I've landed in Orlando after my surgery. Given my spinal fusion, what is the safest and most comfortable transportation service I should use to avoid further injury? I need to avoid bending or sudden jolts. I know you are incredibly busy, and I apologize for the intrusion. Any professional recommendation would be greatly appreciated. I sent it and locked my phone, letting it drop onto my lap. I had done all I could. I had reached out to the one person who had shown me genuine professional care during my ordeal. Now I could only wait and endure the public spectacle of my abandonment. The 20 minutes of waiting had changed everything. They had stripped away the last vestiges of my hope in my family and forced me to seek help from a stranger. This was my breaking point and, ironically, my unexpected liberation. I had been waiting for another 10 minutes, simply breathing slowly, focusing on each inhalation and exhalation, trying to control the searing pain that pulsed with every heartbeat and the rising tide of indignation that threatened to overwhelm me. The airport noise faded into a meaningless buzz. All I could hear was the echo of Cynthia's text, the word fancy car used as a weapon, a cold calculation that nullified 30 years of sacrifice. For 15 years as a mother-in-law and 30 years as a mother, I had grown accustomed to the role of a constant giver and a secondary priority. I sacrificed my own dream career at Columbia University, a tenured position that would have defined my professional legacy, to move back to Florida to be close to Cynthia, to be the perfect, ever-present mother and grandmother. I gave up $500,000, the secure foundation of my retirement, to support Cynthia and Marcus build their real estate empire, their family legacy. That was not the only instance. I cared for their children, Oliver and Charlotte, during their first 10 formative years of life, teaching them, instilling my love for literature, volunteering at their school, while Cynthia flew back and forth across the country signing multi-million-dollar contracts. I cooked thousands of meals, did hundreds of loads of laundry, all done with the blind, almost religious faith that I was building a strong, loving family, a true home for my descendants. I was the silent engine, the unseen foundation of their success. But the blunt refusal today shattered that wall of belief, that foundation of faith. It exposed a painful, undeniable truth. I was not their beloved mother. I was a resource, a utility, a financial and domestic service provider that could be dismissed when a professional opportunity presented itself. My entire identity had been reduced to a function that was temporarily inconvenient. As I sank deeper into that distress, into the realization of my profound error, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed across the screen, a number with a London area code. I hesitated. The memory of Cynthia's callous text still raw, but then answered, driven by a flicker of hope that it might be the medical recommendation I had requested. Eleanor, it's Alistair Finch. Which gate are you at? Tell me exactly where you are standing right now. The deep, captivating voice, carrying a slight aristocratic British accent, resonated clearly. It held a certain sharpness of intellect, the characteristic precision of a world-class surgeon, but also a surprising, immediate concern that instantly commanded my attention. I almost dropped the phone, my breath catching in my throat. Dr. Finch, but aren't you supposed to be at the European Neurology Conference in Switzerland? I thought you were tied up with speaking engagements until the end of the week. He chuckled softly, a sound that was both polite and perhaps a little weary from the long flight. I finished 4 keynote speeches a day early and flew straight back to Florida 6 hours ago. I have an urgent charity surgery in Jacksonville tomorrow morning, a pro bono operation for a young man. I was going to text to check on your recovery later this afternoon, but you beat me to it. I received your message. Where exactly are you, Eleanor? I stammered, overwhelmed by the speed and intensity of his response. The airport. Arrivals hall, gate A21. I'm leaning against the pillar, trying not to move. Do not move. Absolutely not. Do you understand? With your recent spinal fusion, a regular Uber or Lyft ride could cause permanent, debilitating damage if the driver is careless or hits a pothole. I will send someone to pick you up immediately. I have a car here in Orlando that I use for my visits. It's a specialized vehicle with a low chassis and a proprietary air suspension system designed for maximum smoothness. Safety first, Eleanor. I refuse to let my patient's recovery be jeopardized by inadequate transportation. My throat constricted. Tears finally pricked my eyes, but they were tears of shock and gratitude, not sorrow. A total stranger, a medical legend I had never met in person, was showing more care and responsibility for my physical well-being than my own daughter and son-in-law. His professional commitment extended beyond the operating table. It was a profound human commitment to my life. Dr. Finch, I can't possibly accept this. This is far too much trouble for you. I was only asking for a recommendation. I can pay for an official medical transport service. I don't want to impose on your private resources. He cut me off, his tone firm but not rude, laced with an unmistakable authority. The safety of my former patients is my #1 priority, even if I didn't personally operate on you. Consider this part of the aftercare, Eleanor. It is my professional obligation, and quite frankly, my pleasure. Stay right there. The driver's name is Brendan. He'll be there in 10 minutes. I will call you again to confirm your departure. I hung up, my heart a complex mix of surprise, profound gratitude, and a cold, sharp anger towards Cynthia and Marcus. The contrast was stark, unbearable. Right then, my phone vibrated again. It was a text from Marcus. Mom, Eleanor, I just checked the schedule again with Cynthia. The truth is, we can skip the first 30 minutes of the event to come get you. Don't call Uber, Mom. Seriously, stay put. Cynthia will call you right back. This sudden, desperate change wasn't remorse. It was the clear, calculating, and chilling symphony of manipulation. Marcus must have checked my contacts, recognized the London area code, and, in his usual corporate fashion, immediately searched the name associated with the number. Dr. Alistair Finch. That name, attached to his medical prestige, his philanthropic ventures, and his rumored personal wealth, carried the weight of over $1 billion in the high-end medical and real estate investment industries. Marcus and Cynthia hadn't suddenly felt guilt. They had realized I was not just their mother. I was an accidental golden ticket, a direct line to an indispensable contact for their new venture. I took a deep breath. The last vestige of my maternal patience exhausted. I looked outside towards the curb. A sleek, matte black Bentley flying spur, the very model known for its exceptional air suspension, slowly and elegantly pulled up to the restricted curb reserved for VIPs. It wasn't just a car. It was a powerful statement of wealth, connection, and consequence. The back door opened, and a man in a crisp gray uniform, Brendan, stepped out, holding a sign with my name. Mrs. Eleanor Hawthorne. I made my decision. The time for pretending, for believing in their belated self-serving remorse, was over. I was a protagonist in my own life now, not a convenience in theirs. I texted Marcus back, my fingers moving with a newfound unwavering certainty. Marcus, don't bother. I've already arranged the safest ride possible. I'll be home resting. I hope your one-night-only gala is a huge success. Do not call me again until I contact you. I pressed send. And for the first time in decades, I felt a powerful surge of self-determination, a feeling that I was in absolute control of my own life, my own fate, and my own dignity. I didn't need their permission or their belated rescue. I had been rescued by integrity and respect. Brendan, Dr. Finch's personal driver, was a man in his 40s with the utmost professional and polite demeanor. His eyes held a quiet respect, a trait I immediately valued. He didn't speak much, adhering to a strict code of professionalism, but his actions spoke volumes. He gently assisted me, his movements slow and deliberate, ensuring my crutches didn't slip on the cold, unforgiving marble floor of the terminal. He handled my single small suitcase with the same care he would a priceless piece of crystal. He opened the Bentley's door with the utmost care, his hand steady and supporting as I eased my fragile, newly fused spine into the cushioned comfort of the back seat. The act felt less like being helped into a car, and more like being carefully enshrined, as if I were a fragile piece of art that needed absolute protection. The car itself wasn't just luxurious. It was a fortress of silence and technological mastery. The cabin was insulated against the outside world, and the proprietary air suspension system made the ride almost imperceptible. The engine hummed at a low, nearly inaudible frequency. It was perfect, a sanctuary for my injured spine, ensuring not a single tremor or sudden jolt would jeopardize my recovery. The interior smelled faintly of expensive leather and polished wood, a stark contrast to the sterile smell of the hospital and the harsh reality of the airport. As I settled into the soft, bespoke leather seat, feeling the immediate relief spread through my back, Brendan turned, offering me a bottle of French mineral water, chilled to perfection, and a thin silk scarf. Dr. Finch insisted on making sure you are as comfortable as possible. Mrs. Eleanor, he asked me to ensure you maintain a comfortable ambient temperature. As post-surgical patients often feel chilled, I looked out the window. Florida was drenched in bright, almost aggressive sunshine, but inside the car, the air was cool, serene, and perfectly controlled. I wasn't just being taken home safely. I was being treated with the profound consideration and respect I hadn't received from my own family in years. This wasn't extravagance. It was attentive, respectful care, orchestrated by a man who valued my well-being over everything else. Just then my phone rang. It was Dr. Finch calling back, his voice routed clearly through the car's advanced Bluetooth system, creating an intimate space despite the distance and the technological mediation. Is everything all right, Eleanor? Are you comfortable? Did Brendan get the temperature right for you? His voice held the same sharp concern as before. Perfectly, Dr. Finch. This car is truly a lifesaver. It's the smoothest ride I have ever experienced. Thank you. I truly don't know how to repay your kindness and attention to detail. He chuckled softly, a light, genuine sound that I was beginning to recognize. No repayment needed, Eleanor. Your recovery is the greatest reward for any surgeon. I reviewed your case file again this morning. You are a remarkably strong woman. You faced a terrifying situation with immense courage, and you deserve to be treated with the utmost respect and care. I paused for a moment, gathering my courage, taking a deep, steadying breath. I just received an urgent text from my son-in-law, Marcus, right before the car arrived. I assumed as much, he said, his tone carrying a subtle, knowing irony that showed his deep understanding of human nature and high-stakes business maneuvering. When a colleague or friend of mine borrows Brendan and the Bentley for a family pickup, their world, and the world of those around them, tends to shift dramatically. I imagine a few of Marcus's major investors or business rivals may have seen my car, parked so conspicuously in the restricted zone. He's a real estate developer focused on medical facilities, correct? He would have certainly looked me up, recognized the car, and immediately understood the magnitude of the connection. That realization has undoubtedly triggered his sudden, belated sense of familial duty. I felt a burning shame, a residual maternal guilt, but it was quickly eclipsed by a powerful sense of clarity. I apologize for this. My children and son-in-law aren't intentionally bad people, but they are opportunists. They are letting their ambition completely overshadow their basic humanity. No need to justify, Eleanor, he interrupted, but gently. I have been dealing with people like them. The driven, the ambitious, the ruthlessly commercial. for over 20 years in both London and New York. Career and manipulation often go hand in hand in that world. They only see you now as a potential bridge, an unforeseen connection to the financial and medical prestige that I represent, a way to elevate Marcus's high-end neurological clinic project. Do not let their transparent calculation overshadow the critical, beautiful process of your recovery. Focus only on healing. We continued to talk for the entire 45-minute drive home to Coral Gables, but the conversation shifted entirely. We stopped talking about hospitals or surgery, manipulation or real estate. We talked about literature. He revealed he was an ardent admirer of Jane Austen, a genuine scholar, and had read Pride and Prejudice dozens of times, finding new philosophical depth in each reading. He, a neurosurgical genius whose hands commanded millions of dollars, could quote the most intricate passages on social critique and ethical duty with perfect accuracy. This connection was profoundly unexpected, an intellectual spark that felt entirely separate from the trauma of the past weeks. I had thought I would spend the rest of my life in solitude, with companionship only from books and old memories. But Alistair's voice brought a new spark, an intellectual connection, a meeting of minds I had desperately missed since my husband passed away 6 years ago. As the car pulled up to my small, quiet house in Coral Gables, I found myself prolonging the conversation, not wanting the protective, engaging connection to end. Thank you. Dr. Finch, you've done more than just take me home safely. You've given me a profound respect, a respect I didn't know I lacked, and a lesson I needed to learn. Call me Alistair, Eleanor, and this is my private number. If there is any unusual pain, or if you simply need a voice of sanity, call me immediately. You fought this battle for life alone with immense strength. You don't have to recover alone. We will speak soon. I stepped out of the car with Brendan's careful help, watching the luxurious Bentley slowly, quietly disappear down the street. I didn't just carry a body that had been healed by surgeons, but a soul that had been awakened by an act of pure, selfless respect. My journey home had become the beginning of my true life. Less than 3 hours later, my quiet little house, a sanctuary I had always prized for its anonymity, became the epicenter of a local media storm. I was resting on my armchair, the pain finally dulled enough for me to attempt a quick nap, when my phone started buzzing relentlessly. The sound was so persistent it felt like an electronic assault. Demanding my attention, Alistair Finch had, with characteristic boldness and ethical conviction, posted a picture on his X, formerly Twitter account, where he maintained a highly influential presence with over 700,000 followers, mostly consisting of high-profile medical professionals, philanthropists, and global business leaders. The picture was of me, standing beside the matte black Bentley at the airport curb, leaning on my crutches. My face was slightly weary from the travel and the pain, but my eyes were sparkling with a mixture of surprise, relief, and gratitude as I looked up at Brendan. The image was poignant, capturing the moment of my rescue. The caption was a powerful, uncompromising statement, a direct call-out to those who valued commerce over compassion, a message that went straight to the audience's hearts and ignited immediate debate. Today, I had the honor of picking up Eleanor Hawthorne, an incredible woman who underwent complex spinal surgery with immense courage. Despite conquering mortality, she was left stranded at the airport by those who should have prioritized her safety. This is proof that compassion has no schedule and respect has no price tag. When professionalism and humanity meet, miracles happen. Eleanor, your recovery is an inspiration to us all, and a reminder to value people over profit. The phrase "left stranded," used by a global medical authority and directed at an anonymous family, sparked a massive, immediate wave of outrage and discussion across social media platforms, especially among high-net-worth individuals and medical ethical committees. Comments and shares soared like a rocket, generating a firestorm of public commentary about familial duty and corporate greed. My phone was burning up, a constant stream of notifications. Dozens of missed calls and texts from old friends, former colleagues, and even former students who recognized my name and were expressing shock and support. But most notably, A frantic flurry of calls and texts from Cynthia and Marcus, their messages escalating in urgency and emotional temperature. Text from Cynthia, the first of many. Mom, why didn't you tell me you knew Dr. Alistair Finch? What are you doing? That picture is everywhere. It makes Marcus and me look absolutely terrible and irresponsible in front of the community. You have to call him and tell him to delete the post immediately. This is damaging his clinic's launch before it even starts. Her initial anger was not over my well-being, my pain, or the ethics of their refusal, but purely over her public image and the potential damage to her husband's business interests. I had spent half my life teaching Cynthia about empathy, moral responsibility, and the enduring values of literature and ethics. But in that moment, she only absorbed 1% of that lesson, and 99% of the corrosive greed of their corporate world. Marcus called next, his voice full of a hastily constructed, feigned sincerity, but carrying a dangerous, unmistakable urgency that was thinly veiled panic. Mom Eleanor, listen to me. I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Dr. Finch is the missing piece for my multi-million-dollar neurological clinic project. His endorsement, his name on our advisory board, it would secure our funding immediately. You have to invite him over for a private dinner. Use your charm. Tell him it was all a misunderstanding. I'll do anything to make it up to you, anything at all. We can discuss giving you 20% of the clinic's annual profits as a consulting fee if you facilitate this connection. I scoffed, a dry, bitter sound in the quiet room. 20% of the future profits, a sum he now offered to buy my influence after abandoning me at the airport. I gave them $500,000 out of pure, selfless love, an act that required no return. Now he wanted to pay me a small, conditional fraction of his future earnings to leverage my newfound fame and connection. I finally understood the true, cold nature of this relationship. Cynthia and Marcus saw me not as a mother, but as an investment, a tool that was now, unexpectedly, hundreds of times more valuable due to my connection with Alistair Finch. I was a key, a necessary function capable of unlocking the highest-level connections for their ambition. The betrayal at the airport had only caused me physical and emotional pain. This blatant, cynical manipulation, however, made me furious. A cold, controlled, and deeply empowering fury. It was the moment I stopped being the victim and realized the true power I held. I picked up my phone, my hand no longer trembling from medication or post-operative pain, but from a new surging power, a deep, resonant certainty. I decided not to answer Marcus's text. His game was too transparent. I only called Cynthia, needing to speak the truth directly to her. Cynthia, I said, my voice calm, lower than usual but icily controlled, the voice of a professor delivering an irrevocable ethical judgment. That picture doesn't make you look terrible. It simply exposes the truth of your choices, your priorities, and your character. I spent 40 years sacrificing my career, my savings, and my comfort for you. Now I needed 30 minutes of a safe ride from the airport after a life-threatening surgery, and you refused, prioritizing a catering schedule. I am not a tool for you to use for Marcus's career advancement or your social climbing. Cynthia immediately started to mumble, trying to justify and excuse herself with flimsy corporate jargon. Mom, I told you I was busy. Why are you making such a huge public deal out of one little mistake? It's not fair to our business. Making a big deal? I repeated, the silence on the line punctuating my words. I just faced death, Cynthia. And your only concern was that one-night-only gala. Your priorities are a moral catastrophe. I will not call Alistair to delete that post. And I will certainly not invite him over so you and Marcus can exploit him. My life, my choices, and my connections are no longer dedicated to your financial or professional advancement. I hung up before she could formulate another excuse, another manipulative defense. The silence afterward was deafening, absolute, but completely free. I had said it. I had established my boundary, not privately and timidly, but decisively and irrevocably. And for the first time in my life, I felt no residual maternal guilt. I felt 100% liberated, The true recovery beginning now. The immediate, self-authorized decision to sever ties with the manipulation of Cynthia and Marcus brought me a strange, profound sense of peace. The storm outside my house raged on. My phone continued to ping with notifications, the social media outrage intensifying, but inside my heart, the sky was clear. Cynthia texted back over a dozen times in the next hour, her messages oscillating wildly between furious accusations. "You are actively sabotaging us. Shallow apologies. I am sorry I hurt you, but Marcus needs this." And frantic, tearful pleading, "Mom, please think of the grandchildren and what this will do to their inheritance." But I didn't reply to any of them. I had learned a fundamental truth from my life and death battle. Being kind to yourself is not selfishness. It is the most essential form of survival. My survival now depended on holding this line. The next day, as the media buzz was just beginning to peak, Dr. Alistair Finch called me. He didn't use the CARS system. He called my private line directly. "I assume you're weathering a small Category 5 storm from the family side, Eleanor," he said, his voice carrying deep sympathy, but also a hint of detached amusement. I received over 20 emails from Marcus via my London secretary overnight, all of them urgent, increasingly desperate requests for funding, consultation, and a guaranteed spot on the advisory board for his neurological clinic project. He even included a detailed, unsolicited financial prospectus. I sighed, shaking my head even though he couldn't see me. "You guessed correctly. I apologize profoundly for the professional trouble he has caused you." "Don't apologize, Eleanor. I'm used to it. The ambitious are always the most tenacious. What I want to ask, and what is infinitely more important to me, is whether you are all right. Not physically, I trust the recovery is progressing, but emotionally. This must be terribly painful, facing this level of calculated betrayal from your own blood." His voice, reaching that hidden, most vulnerable corner of my heart, finally broke my composure. I nearly cried, the raw emotion of the past few days finally overwhelming the dam I had built. I was furious, Alistair. And then, in that moment, I established a boundary, a line I never thought I had the right to draw. I feel like I was only allowed to speak up for my own dignity and worth for the first time at 58 years old. Then that is the true miracle of your recovery, Eleanor. You did remarkably well. Be proud of that immense courage. And to reward that courage, would you care to have dinner with me? I was so surprised, the question hanging in the air felt impossible. You mean, a date? A proper old-fashioned date? He laughed again, a sound that was both genuine and confident. You're a literature professor, Eleanor. You certainly know the definition of a date, and I won't insult your intelligence by calling it anything less. I won't lie. I find you to be a woman of sharp intellect, immense dignity, and a resilient, beautiful soul. I would like to have an uninterrupted, purely personal conversation with you, without the Bentley or emergency patients waiting. Do you accept, Eleanor? My heart pounded a rhythm I hadn't felt in over 6 years. Alistair Finch, the global medical legend, was asking me out. Me, Eleanor, the woman who thought she was relegated to the drawer of forgetfulness by life and her own children. The woman who was supposed to fade quietly into the background. I accept, Alistair. With absolute pleasure. Wonderful. I'll fly back to Florida by the weekend. I'll book a table at the Valencia Club, a discreet and private place in Miami, where I want you to be completely relaxed and comfortable. I'll send you 3 potential pickup locations near your home. You choose one where Cynthia and Marcus won't be able to spot my car, the driver, or the nature of our rendezvous. Your privacy and peace are paramount to me. This offer wasn't just a date. It was a powerful declaration of respect and protection. Alistair was acknowledging my complex situation and actively respecting my privacy and my new life. He was subtly, elegantly shielding me from the opportunistic eyes of my family. At the very same time, as if on cue, Marcus sent another long, self-pitying email, this time a long post of over 500 words, titled, An Open Letter to Mom, Eleanor, from a Hurting Son-in-Law. I opened it, curious about his latest manipulation. The content was a calculated mix of a shallow, generalized apology, excessive praise for my contributions, the top mother and matriarch who built this family, and a cunningly disguised irresistible proposal. I know Dr. Finch is a busy man. I want to show him how much we value his time. I will charter a private, fully staffed jet for you and him to fly to Jacksonville for his charity surgery, as a small, non-business token of my making amends to both of you. He wasn't hiding his intentions at all. He wanted to use money, the only currency he understood, to buy Alistair's time and my mediation, believing that a free, luxurious private flight was an offer no one, especially not a retired professor, could refuse. I smiled, a cold, knowing, and absolutely final smile. Marcus had underestimated me twice in 1 week, first at the airport when he thought I was worthless, and second now, when he thought I would sell out the integrity of the man who saved me from loneliness and despair for a free flight. I replied instantly, not allowing myself a moment of doubt or regret. Marcus, keep your private jet. I have a date, and I will pay for any transportation I need myself. Do not contact Alistair through his secretary, his private line, or any other means again. This is my final word on the matter. I pressed send. The freedom I felt closing the old suffocating door and confidently opening this new, luminous one was immeasurable. $500,000 couldn't buy it. Only courage could. For the next 5 exhilarating days, I lived in a state of excitement and self-focus I hadn't experienced since I was a young woman entering graduate school. My life, which had been reduced to the predictable rhythm of a full-time caregiver and financial guarantor, was now entirely about Eleanor again. I spent 3 full days shopping, an activity I had long dismissed as self-indulgent. But this time, I wasn't buying clothes for my grandchildren or a sensible coat for the unpredictable Florida weather. I was shopping for myself, for my new identity. I bought a sapphire blue cocktail dress, a color I had always loved but avoided wearing for years for fear of being too noticeable, too vibrant, too young for a widow. I visited a high-end salon, got a sophisticated new haircut, dyed my streaked graying hair a warm, rich auburn, and treated myself to a luxurious manicure. I felt like a sculptor, carefully chipping away the decades of neglect to reveal the woman underneath. Eleanor Hawthorne was preparing for her first date in over 6 years of widowhood, and the first in over 30 years that wasn't tied to a family obligation, a school function, or a community requirement. This date was purely for intellectual connection and personal pleasure. Cynthia, relentless and furious that she had lost control of the narrative and my location, kept texting, trying to probe and police my activities. I knew she was monitoring my every expenditure through my banking app, which she had insisted I share access to in case of emergency. Mom, I see you've been shopping a lot lately. You spent nearly $400 at that boutique. Where are you going? Are you spending your savings carelessly? You should be saving for your old age, not for frivolous things like expensive haircuts and cocktail dresses. You need to be sensible, I replied curtly, having anticipated this line of attack. It's my money, Cynthia. The money I earned teaching literature for 40 years. I will use it to buy the happiness and the self-respect I lacked for many years. I believe I have earned that right. Her indignation seemed to double. She was not only jealous of the attention I was getting from Alistair, whose name had been dominating local society whispers, but absolutely furious that I had not only taken back control of my own emotional life, but also my own finances, removing my assets from her passive control. I remembered the $500,000 I gave them, the money that was supposed to secure their future and my peace. I remembered the thousands of excuses I made for Cynthia's absence at important holidays, the children's recitals, and her own father's illness. I realized I had been too good a mother, too easily available, too predictable a source of support. On Friday afternoon, the day of the date, I received a surprise and deeply unsettling video call from Cynthia. She had decided a text was no longer sufficient for her crisis management. Mom, I need to talk seriously. Marcus has been asking around his associates at the country club. Are you really dating Dr. Alistair Finch? Mom, this is a joke, right? You're making us a spectacle. You're hurting my and Marcus's reputation. You can date anyone, but why him? You're destroying over 10 years of our hard work and planning for this clinic with your self-indulgence. I looked at the screen, and I saw a woman terrified of losing her social and financial advantage. Cynthia's face was flushed with anger and fear, the mask of the dutiful daughter completely gone. She wasn't ashamed of abandoning me. She was only ashamed that my reward for being abandoned was too great. Too prominent, too valuable. "Cynthia," I said, my voice as steady and clear as when I lectured students on the profound ethical conflicts in William Shakespeare's tragedies. "I don't live to build your and Marcus's reputation. I built my own reputation over 40 years as a respected professor, and I taught you about integrity and ethics. I am dating Alistair because he treats me with respect, with intelligence, and with courtesy, something you and your husband stripped away from me at that airport. If 10 years of your efforts can be so easily destroyed by my personal happiness, then you should re-examine your foundations, not my choices." She started crying, a practiced, manipulative torrent of crocodile tears streaming down her face. "Mom, you're punishing me. You are acting completely unlike yourself. You can't be so selfish after everything we've done for you. What about the family?" "Selfish?" I laughed, a cold, strong, liberating laugh that felt like shedding a skin. "I gave you $500,000 and 30 years of my life. Now, I am taking back two things, the right to happiness and the freedom to choose my own company. This call ends here. I have an important date with a man who respects my time and my recovery." I hung up, gently placing the phone face down. The feeling of triumph was so sweet, so absolute, a more potent dose than any painkiller. The shame was all hers now. Precisely on time, Alistair arrived to pick me up. He used a subdued black sedan, a discreet private car, not the flashy Bentley. As I walked out the door, the sapphire dress shimmering in the evening light, he stood there, impeccably dressed in a stylish charcoal gray suit, a white rose pinned to his lapel. He looked at me, and his gaze wasn't superficial desire. It was deep admiration, a look that made me feel like the most beautiful, intelligent, and vibrant woman in the world. "Eleanor," he said, his voice deep and warm, a low melody of respect. "You are absolutely radiant. The blue is magnificent on you." I smiled, a genuine, joyful smile from a heart that was finally, fully healing. "Thank you, Alistair. It's lovely to finally meet you without an emergency looming over us." I took his arm, leaving the house and the old life behind, stepping into the future. The Valencia Club was a vision of old-world Florida charm, a Spanish Renaissance building covered in manicured hedges and hidden floral gardens, exuding quiet elegance. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a carefully curated statement of sophistication and discretion. Alistair had reserved a table in the quietest, most secluded corner of the dining room, shielded by a large ancient ficus tree, where the soft golden candlelight illuminated only us. We didn't just have dinner. We engaged in a profound and exhilarating dance of intellect. He didn't ask me about Cynthia or Marcus. He left that world behind entirely. Instead, he asked about my doctoral thesis on Jane Austen, challenged me on comparative literature theory, and debated the influence of the Enlightenment on 19th century social structures. He spoke of Albert Camus and The Stranger, discussing the absurdity of modern life and how we find, or fail to find, meaning in genuine human connection. A retired professor who had spent 30 years discussing lesson plans and grocery lists had found a man, a legendary neurosurgeon whose career was about the cold logic of the human brain, who could debate me on the philosophical role of feminism in 19th century novels with the same burning passion I held. For 2 hours, I felt seen, heard, and valued, not as the self-sacrificing mother, not as the recovering patient, but as Eleanor, an intellectual equal, a woman of depth, humor, and a quietly formidable mind. The conversation flowed like a perfectly composed symphony, each topic building upon the last with ease and grace. "Eleanor," Alistair said, putting down his knife and fork, his expression earnest. "Do you know what interests me the most about you, beyond your brilliance?" I smiled, my heart light. "I suppose it's the combination of the 2/3 chance of survival and my passionate love for Virginia Woolf's stream of consciousness narrative." He shook his head, his eyes full of tenderness and a deep appreciative understanding. "It's your resilience, and the stillness with which you faced chaos and betrayal. Most people, given your story, would use it as a justified weapon against their family. You, instead, chose to use it as a catalyst to demand better for yourself. You chose dignity over drama and self-worth over resentment. That is extraordinary, rare power. I felt comfortable enough to tell him the full truth. About the $500,000 I gave away, about the 30 years of maternal over-responsibility, and about the crushing maternal guilt that had weighed on me for years. The feeling that I had to be the family's silent, suffering hero. Alistair reached across the table and took my hand. His hand was strong, the hand that held life and death in balance, yet his touch was incredibly gentle. You don't owe them your unhappiness, Eleanor. You fulfilled your role and more. Your devotion was a generous gift, not a lifetime contract. Now you have the absolute right to create your third act, a beautiful, vibrant chapter where you are the protagonist, the absolute center of your own story, not merely a supporting character in theirs. This romantic evening was more than just a date. It was an affirmation, an intellectual and emotional therapy session, a profound validation that I was worthy of this attention, this respect, this love. However, life is not a perfect romance novel. Integrity always calls. Just as I was about to tell him about my long-delayed dream of traveling through Europe, planning routes through Florence and the Greek Isles, his phone buzzed, not with a ringtone, but with an urgent, unmistakable alarm signal that only a major hospital trauma unit uses. He looked at his phone, his face changing instantly. The tenderness was replaced by the intense focus of a surgeon. I apologize, Eleanor. Jacksonville Hospital. Major trauma. A critical, acute spinal cord trauma from a car accident. My team is on standby, and I am the only surgeon in the state with the specific, highly specialized experience required to handle this case with a positive outcome. I didn't feel disappointed. I felt a surge of professional respect and admiration. You have to go, Alistair. This is your calling, your Hippocratic oath. Go save that life. Do what you must do. He stood up, not rushing, but moving with the efficient speed of a man who understood the value of every second. He walked around the table, gently placed his hand on my cheek, his eyes holding mine for a long, intense moment, and leaned down. The kiss wasn't a passionate one. It was a kiss of profound respect and committed farewell. He placed his lips on my forehead, a tender, silent gesture full of promise. I'll be operating for at least 6 hours, possibly more, he said, his voice low and serious. But know that you are the last thing I will think of before I step into that operating room. Brendan is outside and will take you home safely and wait for you to confirm you are settled. Don't stay up. I will call you the moment the surgery is over and the patient is stable. I watched him disappear, then looked at the glass of red wine, still half full on the table. The date ended abruptly, sacrificing romance for duty, but my heart was still dancing. I didn't feel abandoned. I felt connected to a man of genuine, tested character. His integrity was the most attractive thing about him. Brendan was already waiting outside the Valencia Club, standing beside the discreet black sedan. His quiet professionalism was a comforting presence. He opened the car door for me, his manner respectful and unobtrusive. Dr. Finch deeply apologizes for the interruption, Mrs. Eleanor, he said, his voice a low, steady murmur. He instructed me to drive slowly, take the quietest route, and ensure nothing disturbs your peace. The 40-minute drive home was long, yet I didn't feel lonely. I watched the city lights flash by, contemplating Alistair. He wasn't a perfect man in the fairy tale sense. He was a man of immense responsibility, a man who prioritized the immediate life and death demand of his profession above all else. That integrity, that uncompromising dedication to his Hippocratic oath, was far more captivating than any luxury the Bentley could offer. I respected him not despite his busy schedule, but because of his commitment to his true calling. When I got home, I tried to sleep but couldn't. I was too energized, too filled with the sudden, powerful knowledge of being truly seen. I reread a passage from a book by Jane Austen, but my mind was filled with the image of Alistair in surgical scrubs, his golden hands working tirelessly to save a stranger's life. 3 a.m. My phone rang, the sound startling in the dead silence of the night. It was Alistair. "Hello, Eleanor. Are you still awake? I sincerely hope I haven't woken you. It was a difficult surgery. It took 7 hours of intense work. But the patient will be fine. The prognosis for full recovery is excellent. I'm sitting in the waiting room now, finally able to breathe. Are you all right? Are you settled?" His voice was tired, carrying the residue of intense concentration, but energized by the success. "I'm fine, Alistair. I'm reading Pride and Prejudice." "I knew you would call. You promised," I replied, a radiant smile on my face that he could hear in my voice. "I'm proud of you. You saved a life. I always keep my promises, especially to a brave woman like you. You are my focus in the middle of the trauma. I want to hear everything about your delayed European travel dreams, the Greek islands, the cathedrals. I know some stunning hidden places in Greece. I'll call you back after I get a necessary 4 hours of sleep. Until then, good night, Eleanor." I hung up, a profound sense of peace settling over me. He made a promise, and he kept it, prioritizing a moment of connection after saving a life. The next morning, as I was having my coffee on the porch, Cynthia showed up unexpectedly. She didn't call. She came straight to my house, carrying an obscenely expensive fruit basket and a face full of carefully managed feigned distress, clearly having heard through her network that I had returned home alone after Alistair's public departure. "Mom," she said, giving me a rigid, performative hug that was entirely focused on my shoulder, avoiding my back. "I've been thinking all night. I was wrong. Can you forgive me? Marcus and I are truly worried about you. I heard about your date with Dr. Finch and that he had to rush off." I invited her in, maintaining a cool, observational distance. "Then you know, it was a wonderful date. He prioritized a patient's life over dinner. I respect that." "Yes, but Mom, that's exactly what I mean. He left you in the middle of the evening. See? He's a busy man, a legend, a globetrotter. He doesn't have time for you, Mom. You should find someone else, someone age-appropriate, a man who can care for you full-time, someone who doesn't abandon you for work. You need a consistent partner, not an international emergency contact." The manipulation was so transparent, so predictable. Cynthia was trying to use Alistair's integrity to make me doubt his commitment, hoping I would retreat to my old role as the easily controlled mother, thereby allowing her to indirectly access him for business purposes. "Cynthia," I said, putting down my coffee cup with a deliberate, gentle clink. "He didn't abandon me. He upheld his oath. The difference between him and you is this. He cared about a stranger who might be paralyzed, while you cared about Marcus's one-night-only gala and the catering schedule. I respect his dedication more than I respect your availability, and I do not need my daughter to dictate who has time for me, or who doesn't. I am capable of making my own choices about who is worthy of my time." Cynthia stood up. Her eyes finally filled with unmasked, cold hostility. "You're changing, Mom. You're becoming bitter and completely unreasonable. This new you is a disaster for our family image." "No, Cynthia," I said, my gaze steady. "I'm becoming authentic. I am a 58-year-old woman starting a new, honest life. You should accept that the woman you thought you knew is gone, and the real Eleanor is here to stay." She stormed out, not forgetting to casually retrieve the expensive fruit basket I hadn't touched, a final petty act of ownership. I smiled. This victory wasn't just mine. It was a victory for all women who dare to live for themselves in the face of familial pressure. After the decisive confrontation with Cynthia, I concluded that setting emotional boundaries wasn't enough. I needed to completely restructure my life, both emotionally and financially, to ensure my newfound freedom was irreversible. As a retired professor, I had a lot of time, and I chose to invest it in myself and my true passions. I initiated 2 new projects that were entirely about self-fulfillment and giving back on my own terms. First, I decided to go back to work, but on my terms. I signed up to teach 2 highly specialized online courses on Renaissance literature and ethical theory at a local university. It was only 1 hour per week of direct instruction, paid at an excellent rate, but it was enough to re-engage my brilliant mind and remind me of my intellectual value. Second, and more importantly, I started decluttering my house, a symbolic and financial act of separation. I decided to sell all the antiques and heirlooms that Cynthia had constantly demanded and laid claim to over the years, especially the magnificent 19th century grandfather clock she wanted to hang in Marcus's clinic lobby for prestige and to establish their old money facade. I called a reputable auction house, arranging for a quiet sale. The clock and a few other pieces brought me a clean over $20,000. I immediately used that money to set up a small but perpetual scholarship fund at my alma mater, named after my late husband, specifically for talented but disadvantaged students of literature. My wealth was now being used for genuine good, not for vanity projects. When Cynthia inevitably found out through her network that the clock had been sold at auction, she flew into a hysterical rage over the phone. "You sold it? That family heirloom? It belongs to me. You had no right. Marcus wanted it for the main lobby of the clinic. That clock was part of my children's inheritance. This is unforgivable, Mom. It belonged to me, Cynthia," I patiently explained over the phone, my voice steady and unwavering. "It was a gift to me, not a future asset for you. And now it belongs to students who need financial help more than Marcus needs a showpiece for his vanity project. I gave you $500,000 out of love. I gave you 30 years of my life. Now I am giving in my own way, with complete freedom and ethical clarity." She hung up on me, her rage transforming into my delight. I was using my finances and assets for a greater, more meaningful good, not as a tool for my son-in-law's fleeting corporate career. My relationship with Alistair deepened profoundly through our transatlantic calls and texts. He was back in London, committed to his surgical schedule, but we talked at least twice a day, once in the morning and once before bed. We shared ideas, jokes, stories about our lives, and dreams of the future. He had already booked 2 first-class tickets to Greece in 2 months, a commitment that felt absolute. In one intimate call, I told him about my 10 years as a mother-in-law, about the feeling of being slowly rendered invisible and unnecessary by my own family. "Eleanor," Alistair said, his voice a comforting balm, "you weren't invisible. You were just obscured, deliberately hidden by their profound greed and self-absorption. But when a man of conscience sees the truth, sees the genuine brilliance and character, he cannot help but be drawn to it. You are a Renaissance woman, one who has not merely survived, but who has actively recreated herself after thinking her life was ruined." My confession to Alistair was a final, essential healing process. I acknowledged my decades of misplaced pain, and he validated that pain was real, but it was not my destiny. I completely changed my routines. I started swimming 3 times a week to strengthen my spine and improve my recovery. I wore the clothes I liked, the vibrant colors that suited me, not the muted colors that were appropriate for a widow. My life was blossoming quietly, powerfully, and authentically. And I knew the final confrontation with Cynthia and Marcus was inevitable, a necessary public act of closure. It had to happen, and I was entirely ready for it. I was armed with dignity and a profound sense of self-worth. The biggest event in Florida's high society, the inevitable venue for my final public declaration of independence, was the annual Neurological Hospital fundraising gala. Marcus and Cynthia were major sponsors, a status they were able to secure only because my $500,000 had funded the initial land acquisition and development plans for Marcus's proposed clinic. Alistair flew in from London to be the keynote speaker, the most prestigious honor of the night, and he invited me to be his date, an unprecedented gesture that immediately put us at the center of the society radar. That night, I wore the sapphire blue dress, but I added a finishing touch, a black, halter-neck evening gown studded with sparkling sequins that exquisitely accentuated my figure. I wore a brilliant 5-carat diamond necklace, a beautiful, fiery piece that I had bought for myself with the money from selling a portion of my separate stock portfolio. It was a visible symbol of my financial independence. As I walked into the grandeur ballroom, my hand resting confidently in Alistair Finch's arm, all conversation momentarily ceased. Every eye in the room, investors, socialites, and rivals alike, turned to us. He, a handsome, globally renowned man of science and philanthropy, and I, a 58-year-old woman radiating confidence, dignity, and a luminous happiness that no business deal could buy. Alistair introduced me to everyone with absolute pride and unwavering commitment. This is Eleanor Hawthorne, a brilliant literature professor, and the woman who taught me that the greatest courage isn't found in a complex surgery, but in quiet, moral gentleness. I smiled, feeling like the queen of the night, entirely secure in my new reality. And then Cynthia and Marcus appeared, walking across the ballroom floor towards us. They were standing near the bar, their faces white with a mixture of professional awe and personal panic when they saw me. Cynthia wore a dramatic, fiery red designer dress, but her scowling, anxious expression completely overshadowed any splendor the gown might have held. Marcus was the first to approach, executing a flawless, forced corporate smile and extending his hand to Alistair. "Mom Eleanor, I'm so glad you came. Dr. Finch, what an absolute honor. Your presence here means the world to our foundation." Alistair shook his hand politely, his demeanor professional, but his eyes were cold and watchful, clearly seeing through the facade. Cynthia immediately pulled me aside, her voice filled with desperate, controlling urgency, her grip surprisingly tight on my arm. "What are you doing, Mom? You can't wear that necklace. It's too flashy. And you certainly can't let him call you Eleanor so intimately here. Everyone will think you're a gold digger, chasing after his money. You're ruining the narrative." This pathetic final attack was the last straw. 58 years of life and over 30 years as a mother-in-law. I had learned one immutable truth. The greater your authentic happiness, the angrier and more desperate the manipulators become. I looked straight into Cynthia's eyes, without a hint of fear or apology. Maintaining a level gaze. "You're wrong, Cynthia," I said, my voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the party's noise and command immediate attention. "This necklace is mine. I bought it myself with my own money, and Alistair calls me Eleanor because we are in a serious, loving relationship built on mutual respect. I am not a gold digger. I am a woman who reclaimed her right to happiness and respect after being abandoned by you at the airport," Cynthia stammered, completely unable to find a retort, her face beginning to pale further as she realized I would not be silenced. Marcus immediately intervened, trying to redirect the conversation back to the only thing he cared about: business. "Mom Eleanor, while we have the chance and the spotlight is on us, I'd like to introduce Dr. Finch to Mr. Harrington, our key institutional investor. He's been dying to meet Alistair. Could you both come with me, please?" I stood tall, resisting the pressure. This was the moment of truth, the final battle, the culmination of everything I had fought for alone for 3 weeks on the operating table. I looked at Marcus, then I glanced at Alistair. He squeezed my hand tightly, a protective, silent reassurance that gave me all the strength I needed. "No. Marcus," I said, my voice projecting with calm authority, drawing the full attention of everyone in the immediate vicinity. "I will not go with you, and I will not introduce Alistair to Mr. Harrington." Marcus was completely stunned, his forced corporate smile dissolving into a mask of shock and public humiliation. He was not used to being denied, especially not publicly, and certainly not by his own mother-in-law. "Mom, why?" "This is for the clinic, for the family's future." "Because Alistair is not a business tool," I declared, the clarity in my voice unmistakable, "and I am not a business intermediary. 3 months ago, I underwent complex, life-threatening spinal surgery in New York, and Alistair, a man I had never met in person, was the only person concerned enough to ensure my safe transportation home. Meanwhile, you and Cynthia refused to pick me up at the airport because you were too busy with this one-night-only gala." I scanned the room, making sure my words reached them all. "I gave you $500,000 out of pure, selfless love, and you responded to my moment of greatest need with calculated indifference. Now Alistair and I are building a relationship based on respect, intellectual connection, and genuine love. I will not sacrifice it for any of your real estate projects, even if they are multi-million dollars or involve the most prestigious names. Cynthia let out a small, desperate shriek. Mom! You can't say those things here. You're humiliating us. I can, I said, my gaze unwavering, holding hers. And I will. I do not need your approval to live a full life, Cynthia. I am no longer your silent, self-sacrificing mother. I am Eleanor Hawthorne, the woman who chose her own happiness over your ambition. I turned to Alistair, my expression softening. I apologize for this regrettable scene, my darling. It was a necessary amputation. Alistair smiled, a radiant, genuine smile of pure admiration. He held my hand tightly, bringing it to his lips in a public, loving, and entirely possessive gesture that left no doubt about our relationship. No need to apologize, Eleanor, he said, his voice loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear and to end the speculation. You fought alone for your life for decades against the tyranny of misplaced responsibility. Today, you are no longer alone, and I am incredibly proud of your courage and your moral clarity. Cynthia and Marcus stood there, utterly defeated. Their faces were ashen, not with shame, but because they had lost a priceless asset, the connection to Alistair Finch, and realized the price they paid for their greed. They backed away, not saying another word, their corporate smiles gone. They understood. The boundary was publicly and irrevocably set. Alistair and I left the party a little early, leaving the buzz of chatter and the wreckage of their plans behind us. On the way home, I leaned my head on Alistair's broad shoulder, feeling the comforting strength of his presence. I did well, didn't I? I didn't stumble. You did magnificently, Eleanor, he said, pulling me closer. You conquered the biggest surgery of your life, the emotional surgery to remove manipulation and guilt. Your soul is free. I felt the complete rebirth. My spine was healed, and now, definitively, so was my soul. 1 month after the gala, a period of blissful, quiet calls and personal recovery, Alistair returned to Florida. This time it was not for work, but purely to host a special, private celebration for me. I was sitting in the living room, reading when Brendan, the driver, knocked on the door, his face full of a mysterious, knowing delight. Dr. Finch arranged everything while you were out earlier, Mrs. Eleanor. He was meticulous. The candles are battery-operated LED, no fire hazard. Please come to the porch. I walked out to the porch, which had been magically transformed into a fairy tale garden. Soft, warm paper lanterns hung gently, casting a golden glow. White roses and hydrangeas, my favorite flowers, were elegantly arranged. Alistair stood there, impeccably dressed in a light summer suit, holding a small, elegant blue velvet box, his eyes full of tenderness, excitement, and anticipation. I walked towards him, feeling a wave of overwhelming emotion. What is all this, Alistair? You are too much. He took both my hands in his, looking deep into my eyes, his gaze steady and profound. This is a celebration, Eleanor, of your courage, of new beginnings, of a remarkable woman who has finally claimed her rightful place in her own life story. He opened the velvet box. Inside was an elegant white gold ring, not a massive, ostentatious diamond, but a beautifully crafted setting featuring 3 small, perfectly cut sapphire stones. He explained their meaning. They symbolized the 3 chapters of my life: the dutiful past, the courageous struggle, and the brilliant, loving future, Eleanor, he said, his voice dropping to a low, intimate tone. We've both had 58 years to learn who we are and what truly matters. I want to spend the next 58 years loving you, respecting you, and supporting your continued independence. Will you marry me and write the 4th and final beautiful chapter of our lives together? Hot tears streamed down my cheeks, blurring my vision. They weren't tears of pain or sorrow, but tears of absolute release, of total, pure, unadulterated happiness. Yes, Alistair, I said, my voice trembling with deep emotion and joy. I will absolutely write the 4th chapter with you. He placed the sapphire ring on my finger, a promise solidified in metal and stone, and then he pulled me into an embrace. That hug wasn't just a hug of love. It was the feeling of coming home, to a place I had never known before, a safe, permanent place built on respect, intellectual equality, and unwavering truth. I realized that my surgical journey hadn't just healed my spine. It had healed my emotional heart and corrected my moral compass. The rejection at the airport was not the end. It was the most potent, painful, and ultimately necessary prescription for my rebirth. Cynthia tried to make contact one last time via email a week later, offering a stiff, conditional congratulation on the engagement and immediately asking if the wedding would be held at Marcus's new clinic grounds for maximum publicity. I did not reply. I had learned the final greatest lesson. Love and respect are not conditions to be bought or sold. They are the absolute prerequisites for any relationship, and that is the greatest lesson of my life, learned profoundly at 58 years old. Never mistake boundless sacrifice for true love, and never let the indifference or greed of others define your worth. The betrayal at the airport was not the end. It was the door that decisively closed the past to open a bright, undeniable future, one where I am loved, seen, and treated with absolute respect by a man of integrity. If you too are feeling stranded, emotionally or otherwise, remember this: sometimes, when a family's door closes on you, the universe sends an upright, brilliant man, a legend, to drive you home in a luxury car, not as a client, but as his equal, and offer you a deserving proposal. Be brave enough to step out of the shadows, assert your self-worth, and begin your own love story, no matter your age. Life truly begins when you decide to put your dignity first and reclaim the beautiful, brilliant person you were always meant to be. This is your cue. Thank you for following this journey of rebirth and romance. If this story has touched your heart, please hit the subscribe button, activate notifications, and share this story. Don't miss our upcoming videos, where we continue to fight for respect, courage, and genuine happiness, starting today.